Greetings from Kyoto, where IAFOR is currently holding our annual conference on arts, media, and culture. Today we have a packed plenary program, and we are discussing questions about power and representation within media. Next to me is standing Professor James Moy from the University of South Florida, United States. Welcome to the conference.
Thank you.
Could you introduce yourself and what it is that you do?
Well, my name is James Moy, and for the past 20 years or so, I was an administrator. I was in decanal posts and provost in the arts. And more recently, I decided to go back into teaching, and so that's what I'm doing now. My research focuses on racial representation, and lately I've been very focused on indigenous populations and how they figure into the world of representation. And it's not a good thing lately, but here we are.
And you talked a little bit about this in your presentation today.
Yes.
Can you summarize briefly what it was about?
Well, as I said, I'm really concerned with that the world might forget that there are people who are not Western Europeans. As I mentioned, in the 19th century, the decision was made that non-Europeans were less than human, that they were expected to be extinct. I mean, there were theories that if left alone, they would eventually become extinct, and therefore, the Western Europeans said, we will just take their places, take their land, conquer everything that they have, because they're not going to be here, they're going to become extinct, so we might as well just take it, which is the process that's even to this day underway.
Why is it this way? How did Western cultural and artistic hegemony become so powerful?
Well, I think that it was established in the 19th century when simply made I guess the most famous piece is the Berlin Conference, the Berlin Conference of 1884, and where essentially Europeans said, if non-Europeans are going to become extinct, we might as well just take their land. And so they decided that who would get what parts of Africa, essentially. It's called the Berlin Conference, where they got together. There were no African people represented, just the people met in Berlin to decide what they would take. And what they took was scary. King Leopold took what came to be called the Congo, the Free State of Congo, and basically during his time more than 10 million indigenous peoples died. All of this because of the Industrial Revolution. It was the Industrial Revolution that drove everything ultimately. The indigenous of Congo were made to collect rubber. Okay, they gave up all of their plantations and everything that they made for subsistence living, just to harvest rubber from the rubber tree plants, which were used to make rubber tires for automobiles. And some of the scariest things that happened were if you were harvesting rubber, but you failed to meet your quota, King Leopold did a nasty thing. He removed their right hand. He chopped off their right hands of that individual. And you would think that would become counterproductive because, he's missing a hand, he can't do his work. But what that did was, and this is the way that the colonial powers controlled the world, people became so afraid that they might lose their hands. They worked doubly hard. Production went up because this person lost his hand. A lot of people lost their hands. And that's pretty much the way the colonial powers controlled people. They either killed them all or chopped off their parts, and that happens to this day. It's happening today in Gaza. They're killing people all over in Gaza, and they're starting to kill people in Lebanon. The mechanism there is destroy these people who oppose Israel, and the rest of the Arab world will fall into place because they don't want to be hurt. Take away their hands, take away their leaders, assassinate the leadership. That's a colonial way forward. this is becoming terribly political, but that's okay. I mean, what the Israelis are doing to Gaza is what the United States did to the Native Americans. In 1823, the Supreme Court of the United States said, local Indians have no rights. They do not own their land. In 1830, the Veil of Tears came into play. The natives were told to leave their land because they never owned it. They must go. And so they were told to walk to Oklahoma. Many of them died on the way walking to Oklahoma. At least they were not being bombed as they walked, like the Gazans were being bombed as they were walking south or walking north or whatever direction they were walking in. So yeah, the mechanisms of control from the 19th century forward to now are pretty much the same. Now we talk about the art. There's similar things taking place there, but the art scene has moved into a rentier phase, where money is not made like in the sort of industrial production. Industrial capitalism was about making things, and the excess value went to the owners of the company. We still have that. The makers, the workers, get their low salary, and the bosses, the owners of the company, become multi-billionaires. Those multi-billionaires don't do anything. They do not work. Okay? And that's the injustice of the capitalist system, in that it's moved up into a totally financial realm where there's no work involved anymore.
And you're arguing that the art scene also follows this path.
The art scene has moved into that similar sort of rentier kind of trajectory where yeah, I think I mentioned a group in the mid-20th century who said they don't want to make any more art that could be sold to the galleries because commissions at that point were like 50 or 60%. The artist only got 40% of whatever he sold his painting for. And so there are artists that tried to resist that. But then they found ways of making money alternatively. When I speak of the Taring Party, the wrong group, Indonesians, collectives, they want to resist that. They don't want to sell work. They expressly resisted the idea that the artwork should go into a gallery or a museum. Their work was about collectively working to support the community, their community of artists, but also the community at large beyond the sort of collective there. It wasn't about becoming a famous name brand artist and selling work for top dollar.
So then the recent rise of Asian art that we see today, for example, Korean dramas, Korean music, K-pop, and Korean fashion, and even Japanese anime and all that. It seems that the West has shifted its lens to attribute more value to Asian art.
That's because they're increasingly Asian collectors. The last couple of years have not been good for the art market. I had all these charts which I never got to show. If you saw the screens afterwards, they were full of charts of what's selling and how much is selling well. And what was interesting is that the last couple of years, Western art auctions, that's where the money is being made. It's in the auctions, because after you sell a work, it appreciates in value, and when it appreciates, you can sell it for more. So a person who's buying art makes money. But increasingly, there are Asian billionaires who are buying art and selling it, reselling it. And there are new auction houses, huge new Sotheby's and Christie's in Hong Kong. Even Japan is getting into it. Japan was not always the most progressive because Japan has a big tax. They have a customs tax and they have sales taxes, so that it would cost more to buy the same artwork here as it would cost in say, Hong Kong. But there's still increasing. That was a part of the paper that I did not get to talk about. You said, talk about Asian art, and I only got as far as Indonesian. But so there are new auction houses opening in mainland China. They just literally, within the last 30 days, hired a new president for, I can't remember the name of, it was Pace. Pace Gallery opened new galleries in Hong Kong and in Shanghai, or is it Shanghai or Beijing? I can't remember. It's Beijing. I know Hong Kong is one of them. The second venue is either Beijing or Shanghai. But just in the last month, they opened new spaces for selling. So yeah, there's money to be made here, which is why there's this increasing interest there.
So this cultural shift is not driven by a more compassion or more understanding or more multilateral cooperation, but it's purely driven by profit.
Well, the commercial galleries, that's all it says. And for the art galleries and museums and the such, yes, they're interested in seeing that the value of their stuff goes up. Nobody wants artwork that's going to go down.
Then because Asian culture and art is becoming more prominent in the West, there are some people who argue that, for example, K-pop is becoming increasingly westernized.
Yeah.
The moves, the dancing, the choreography, the fashion, even including English lyrics in what was purely Korean before, that is becoming more westernized.
And that's very true. It's also true in the static artwork, not just in performance work, but in static artwork. How one analyzes and understands an indigenous work, let's say, to be worth value is how it connects to the history of the art, of Western European art. So I showed a couple the example of the Guernica Gaza that showed a redo of the Delacroix painting with Liberty wearing a kufiya and carrying the Palestine flag. That is traceable to the predecessor of Delacroix, and that can increase in value. Now, if they were about making money, that's what they would do. They find a way to connect it to the history of art, and it will be appropriated and taken into the gallery scene. So in some ways, those examples of GQF are looking for appropriation, where others are not interested in appropriation.
So are we losing Asian distinctiveness in art?
That's hard to say, because even in F's work, there was the Palestinian, the impassioned position of the Palestinian resistance to occupation. And that, I think, is valuable. I think in time, such work will become very valuable. I think, maybe 20, 30 years from now, because it may be assessed that these works were impactful in changing the government, in changing the position with Israel. Let's hope.
So you're saying this will not become another case of neo-colonialism?
I hope not. I mean, I think from the collector's point of view, it might be. But from the point of view of the impact on geopolitical matters, I think there's very strong potential. I'm much more interested in the geopolitical potential and not the not the commercial value. But then, artists have to make a living as well.
Therefore, in our contested political landscape at the moment, is art changing?
I think so. I hope so. But there will always be money to be made. Those who want to make money will find a way.
Well, let's hope that.
Well, my hope is that that all sides of it will grow and find ways to be productive. I think that the socialist, I'm very connected to the notion of a socialist of artwork having a social value and social context and connection. So obviously I hope that will go forward.
Let's hope, with international institution structures changing at the moment, and we're seeing the surge of the global South's power in more decision making. So hopefully that will also spill over to the art industry.
Yeah, I was puzzled. I mean, Jeffrey was talking about how the Russian government was talking to the Ainu up in East Russia. And he said that the Ainu had petitioned for legal fishing rights. He never answered the question, did the Russians grant them legal fishing rights? And I said, well, I will ask him about that later. But these are the kinds of things where political action can have an impact. If they get commercial fishing rights, that'll be a great thing.
But let's hope that indigenous people will be heard in the end.
Well, that's my hope. I teach courses on indigenous performance. and that type of thing. So I'm looking to see that forward progress can be made.
That's great. Let's hope for it. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.